Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're going to wait just a few more minutes for folks to continue logging in and joining the webinar. So thank you. All right, and it looks like we have a few more people joining. So we'll begin in just a moment. All right, it looks like we're ready to start. So, hi everyone, my name is Jenna Compton. I'm the Transportation Electrification Financial Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Transportation. It's a mouthful. I am working closely with Brittany Breen today. She is a member of Fourth. Brittany, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Everyone, my name is Brittany Breen, and I'm a senior program associate at Fourth on our access to charging team. And yeah, I'll be helping answer questions in the chat today.
Perfect. Thanks, Brittany. And so today we're going to be walking through the application. Just for a brief overview, I'm going to begin with the pre-installation portion of the application, and then we're going to follow up with the post-installation portion of the application. Applicants can apply either through the pre-installation or post-installation avenue upon acquiring the funding when the program launches. However, if you are a pre-installation application who then reserves funding after the program launch, you will need to go back into your application and fill out the post-installation portion. So I just wanted to make that clear for everyone. And let's see, Brittany, can you confirm, can you see my screen clearly?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Great. So this is the pre-installation portion of the application. As you can see, we'll start up here at the application ID. It's CCR-3- and then you'll have your number once you submit. Beginning with the application type, the applicant type, you have three options: the site owner, the authorized agent, and the third party. When you're going through the application, you'll want to know which of these you fit under. If you have any questions, you can contact Fourth. Brittany will put the Fourth email in the chat in the next few minutes to help clarify if anybody's confused on which category they fall under. And then moving forward, this looks like it's the post-installation portion. Let me switch my screen over. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, here's the pre-installation one. So for this example, we're going to go through as an authorized agent. And again, we're going to ask if you're applying as pre or post installation. Then following up, I'm going through the application as Jane Doe. And again, all of these examples listed here are illustrative, so ODOT is not endorsing any particular entity. These are just examples to help folks walk through the application. So please don't contact any of these numbers. So yeah, you'll fill out your phone number for the applicant contact information, the applicant organization name, the organization type. There is a drop down with different options. that you can select from. And then if you are a business or certain other entities, we will ask for you to clarify on what type of business. So you can list retail or any other option. And then following through, you'll have to fill out the site verification and recipient acknowledgement form. This form is accessible online currently, so we recommend beginning to fill out that form before you apply, just to have it at the ready. And when you're filling out the site verification form, again, it will ask you if you're an authorized agent, a site owner, or a third party. I can walk through that at the end of this to kind of show folks how that form works. And you'll have to fill out certain sections of the form depending on which applicant type that you fall under. Okay, that link is here if anybody needs it when they're going through their application if they don't have it. And if you select no, you will receive an error and you won't be able to move forward with your application. So make sure you have that on hand. And then the next question is the applicant also the EV charging equipment owner? If you select no, you'll need to fill out the EV charging equipment owner's contact information, their organization type, and their EIN. This is because the rebate does go to the equipment owner, uh, even if the applicant is not the equipment owner. And so if you select yes to this, it will autofill with the previous information that was submitted. Okay. And if I'm moving too quickly, just let us know in the chat and Brittany will flag me to slow down. Okay, so moving on to section 3, you'll want to list your project site type. You'll choose between publicly accessible parking, workplace, or multifamily housing. And then you'll fill out the project site name, which is Jane's business for this example, as well as the real property owner. If the real property owner is somebody different, just make sure to list that name here, as well as the project site street address. And then the project site location type. Again, you have a list of dropdowns to choose from. And depending on how you click through this list, if you select multifamily housing, you will receive different questions. And then the total parking spaces in the lot. So you want to list the amount, 20. As noted, multifamily housing, there is a minimum of 5 parking spaces that need to be on the site. And then you'll need to select your priority type designation, either priority disadvantaged, rural, or non-priority. The map that we've been using previously is still the same. So if you would like to go through on the Community Charging Rebates webpage, you can click the priority type locator, type in your address. Once you're typing in your address, it'll provide a list of drop downs for optional locations. You'll want to click on the one that is accurate to your location. And then when you generate that information, it should list an answer of either priority disadvantaged, rural, or non-priority. In some instances, the location may be priority, rural, and disadvantaged. Please just select the one that best fits your situation or what you think that the project site should be listed under of these two. And if you're a non-priority application, this does not mean that the project site is ineligible. It just means that it's pulling from a different bucket of funding. So I would like to note that some folks think that non-priority means that they're not eligible, and that's not the case. And then it'll ask if the project site is located on tribal reservation or trust land. If you select yes to this question, you'll have a list of options to choose from of which tribe, or you can select no. And then you'll want to list the planned number of high-powered level 2 ports or the planned number of low-powered level 2 ports in this category. And if you have, we'll say 4 and 4, you can see that changes your rebate amount. So I just wanted to show you that quick calculation. And then below this, we have this checkbox that says, I understand that the rebate reservation amount is an estimate calculated by multiplying the base rebate amount by the number of ports and so on. This is just to ensure that everybody understands that upon reserving the project site, so when you submit your application and it goes through the process of review and it's reserved, that this funding is allocated towards your project from the total bucket. However, once we have more information on the post-installation calculations, so how much money was spent on equipment and installation and everything else, then that's where we will calculate the final rebate amount based on either the base rebate amount or 75% of eligible project costs. So this number can vary. If you want more confirmation on how much the actual rebate amount will end up being with all of your installation costs, there is a rebate calculator on the Community Charging Rebates website that you can use to get a better estimate. And so following forward, this is a section of the application that has changed from previous rounds. So have you submitted more than one application for this project site? If you select yes to this, we will ask for the application ID. Please don't include any projects that were denied or canceled. This is if you've had a project that has either been submitted, reserved, or approved. Please list that information here if it's under the same project site. So this would be an example where someone in round one may have installed 4 ports at their site, and they've noticed that utilization is really high and they want to include an additional 4 ports at their project site. Then they would select yes to this answer and list their community charging rebates application ID in this section so that we can tie those 2 applications together and make sure that they're not exceeding the 12 port maximum. Okay, so I'm going to select no to move forward. And then you'll want to select your electric utility here. There's a list of options. If you're unsure of what utility is serving the area of the project site location, you can click this link to find your utility, and it'll take you to the Oregon Department of Energy's page where you can use a map to see which utility serves that area. And then, does your utility offer an incentive? If you select yes, then you'll have these following questions. Will you apply for an electric utility incentive? Yes. If you select no, you will need to list the reason for why you're ineligible for that utility incentive, and we may ask for additional documentation from the utility to confirm that that project isn't eligible. Otherwise, you'll need to apply for the utility incentive, in which you'll list the amount that you'll be applying for. If this amount changes, so if you are receiving, say, $4,000 at the time of reservation or expect to receive that much, and further down the road, once you complete installation, if you install less chargers than expected, or if for whatever reason the utility rebate is not in existence or is out of funding, you can list that later on in your application in the post install. So this amount can change. And then you'll want to update the site verification and recipient acknowledgement form here. If you leave this file option blank, it will flag as an error and you'll need to fill that in. And then you'll want to update your project quote. Below we have a note listing what we want to see in the project quote. For the application, if you don't include this information, your application will be sent back to you with a request for additional information, which will delay your application, how quickly it is reserved. So we do recommend having all of this information listed on your quote from the beginning to have a smooth process for reserving funding. And lastly, you'll see this is section 6 for signatures. Even though it's listed as section 4, this is because as a pre-installation application, you are missing 4 of the pages that need to be filled out. So this will follow up as section 6 when you're filling out your post-installation application. And you'll want to agree to all of the terms and conditions here before moving forward. And if you had any issues with the application, or if there was any documentation that you wanted to provide additional clarity for, just list that in the comments. And when the reviewers are going through the application, they'll be able to see this comment and see your justification for why you input things in a specific way in the application. And then you'll want to sign the document. You can type or draw your signature. And then you'll want to click the submit button. Applicants also have access to the save button, where you can save your application if you only make it through a portion of the way. You click the save button, and then you will be prompted to type in your email address, and then you'll be sent a link to your saved application that you can revisit. However, I would like to note that if once you submit your application, this save button does disappear. And it's a functionality of Cognito. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can tweak at this point. However, we have submitted a like IT support request, so we're hoping that they make the modification to the application, because it's something that some of the applicants have struggled with. So we're hoping to get the save button, but there's no guarantee that it will come back after applicants submit. Okay, so that's the pre-installation portion of the application. If anybody has questions on the application or wants to revisit a certain portion of the site, please list those comments in the chat. I'm going to move on to the post-installation portion of the application. And if we want to revisit, we'll go back at the end of the video so that it doesn't delay the recording when you guys are revisiting this, if you need to come back and check the application out. So I'm going to share my other screen. For application 6, if you filled out the pre-installation portion, you will have already
I think we might be experiencing some technical difficulties here. So we're going to just give it a second and see if Jenna can log back in.
Are you all able to hear me?
Yeah, it looks like you cut out for a second, Jenna. I can hear you now, but I think
Sorry about that.
for a minute there, yeah.
Let me stop sharing the pre-installation application. Okay. Brittany, do you mind confirming where I cut out in the application? I don't want to duplicate. Was it under section 2 or did I make it that far?
I don't think you made it that far. I think,
Okay.
yeah, you might just want to start from the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Thanks. Sorry, everyone. So you can select the applicant type similarly to the pre-installation portion of the application. For this example, I decided to go with the site owner to give you a different variation, as there are many that you can choose from throughout the application. And then you'll want to select post-installation. And moving forward, again, you'll fill out the applicant contact name and information. So all of their contact information will be listed here, the applicant organization name, and for this example, we're doing a multifamily housing unit, so you can see some of the different questions that are asked. And again, you'll want to fill out the site verification and recipient acknowledgement form, select yes, and there's an accessible link here. And moving on to section 2 for the equipment owner information, it's the exact same as the pre-installation portion of the application, where if you select yes, this information will auto-populate. However, if the equipment owner is different from the applicant, you'll select no, and you'll need to fill out the equipment owner information right here. So we're going to select yes, and then you'll want to list the EIN, as well as if the business is a minority or women-owned business enterprise. And moving on to section 3, again, we're choosing a multifamily housing project for this example, and you'll want to list the project site name. So if it's an apartment complex, you'll want to list the complex's name or the business's name or whatever is listed at the project site for the entity, as well as the project site real property owner name and the project site street address. And then following down, you'll want to list the project site location type, which can vary. Here are multiple examples that you can look through and choose from. And then, will the EV charger be located in a parking space that is commonly accessible and not dedicated to individual units? This is a question specifically for multifamily housing projects. If they select yes, they can move forward with their application. However, if they select no, they will need to provide justification for how they plan to make the project site accessible to other residents. So you can move forward. Then we'll also ask the number of housing units in the building for multifamily housing projects. There must be a minimum of 5. So if you list less than 5, you won't be able to move forward with the application, unfortunately. And then you'll also want to list the total parking spaces in the lot. So if there's 50 for this example, and then following forward, you'll want to list the total amount of parking spaces that are shared or visitor parking. So for this example, I did 40, which is a little bit unrealistic. I'll put 10. And so you can list the amount that are accessible to other folks. And this just helps us understand your project site better. Then you'll want to list the priority type designation. Again, the priority type map link is listed here. It's accessible on the website, and you can see what your priority type location is. If you fall under the disadvantage and rural priority type category, you'll just want to choose the one that best suits your situation. Or you can select non-priority. For this example, we're moving forward non-priority, so you can see that it is an eligible priority type. The same question with the tribal reservation or trust lands. If you select yes, you'll have a drop down of options. You select no, you can move forward. Same question applies here. Have you submitted more than one application for this project site address? If you select yes, we'll want to see that application ID number. And if there are multiple, just list a comma and list the next project application. Okay, we'll move forward with no. Then you'll want to list your utility. Again, there's the Find Utility link below if you're unsure of which utility is serving your project site location. And then, does your utility offer incentives? And if you select no, it disappears. If you select yes, you can move forward. Will you be applying? If you select no, you'll need to provide justification. If you select yes, you won't. And you'll want to update your site verification form here. So you'll just place it in this section and we'll move forward. I would also like to mention, I don't think I mentioned this previously, but only wet signatures or those made with a verified e-signature platform like DocuSign will be accepted. Please don't just type your name or signature into the document. That will result in an incomplete application and we can't accept that. Okay, and so this is the section that we haven't seen yet. This is the post-installation project information section, which shows the following. So we're going to ask for installation information, beginning with the installation date. You'll want to list that information here. So depending on when you installed your project, we'll go with March. You can list that in the dropdown. If you hit any of these barriers, so for pre-installation applications, the installation date must be within 300 days, or for post-installation, if the installation date must be more than 90 days prior to submission. Uh, exemptions are provided for projects installed between round 2 end date on July 3rd of 2024 and the round 3 launch date of December 17th. If you go past this time period, this submission will be flagged with an error and you won't be able to move forward. So those are being automatically calculated as you fill in this information. And then we'll request the level 2 charger information. This has a drop-down that's being updated alongside with ODOT's qualified product list. So you can find that list on the Community Charging Rebates Program website now. If you don't see your charger currently listed, please contact EPRI as soon as possible. Brittany can help facilitate that conversation. So if you want to email forth and let them know that your charging station isn't listed or your network isn't listed that you're planning on working with, please let them know, and we'll try to get them added to the list as soon as possible and make sure that they're able to meet the ODOT standards. And then you'll also have the model name, and you'll want to list the kilowatt output, the ports, the amount of ports per charger. If you list one, no, let's see. If you list one, oh, maybe the error is down below. You'll receive this error down here that says that you need to have a higher amount of ports. So make sure you have the right amount of ports. If you have questions on the minimum and maximum port count information, let us know and we can put that in the chat. And then if you plan on installing any level 1 chargers at either a workplace site or a multifamily housing site, we'll collect the information here and you'll just fill these in. Currently, we don't have a qualified product list for level 1 charging stations, so or charging ports, so you can just type that information in here and we'll collect that. However, if you don't have a level 1 charger, you can just close this out and it'll disappear. And then here's the information where the amount of ports that you have installed are being auto-calculated. And you'll want to list the network provider that you're working with. So you can list networked. If it is a multifamily housing site or workplace project, then you can list non-networked. And your network provider, again, we have a list of approved providers. This needs to be updated before the program launch. So if EPRI updates their list before then, we'll update the information on here. However, if it's not updated at the time of launch, then we'll update it in the following few days or weeks when that document is updated. And then moving forward, we have the charging station operator. I listed ChargePoint as that's the entity that we're working with for this example. And then how many hours will the level 2 charger be available to the public? So if this project was application, it would need to meet the minimum of 60 hours per week. However, since this is a multifamily housing unit, it can be excluded to just resident use only, in which case I'm going to be listing 0. Will you charge a fee? If you select no, you'll be able to move forward with the application. If you select undecided, it'll be the same thing. However, if you select yes, we'll need to collect more information. So if yes, please provide the rate of charge. If a rate is deemed unreasonable, ODOT will flag your application and either reach out to ask for further clarification or and to get a better understanding of the situation. And depending on that information, we will come to a decision. If you're using something other than a rate of charge other than the dollars per kilowatt hour, please describe and justify. So one time we had somebody answer $1.75, and that's fairly high for the cost per kilowatt hour. So their intention was to list it here, which was why we asked that question, because it was $1.75 per hour instead of kilowatt hour. Again, if you select yes and don't list this information, you'll receive an error. So we'll move forward with no. And then the length of warranty, applicants must have at least a 2-year warranty to move forward. So you want to list the warranty and who's providing that warranty and who's responsible for maintenance and repairs. In this example, it's ChargePoint. If the project site is participating in another EV charging infrastructure program, you'll want to select yes. If you select no, those fields will be removed. But if you select yes, you'll want to list things like utility incentives, other state or federal grants, or any other sort of funding that you're receiving for this project, just so we're aware of it. And then you'll list the amount that you're receiving. So previously, I mentioned that if you'd reserved funding for $1,000 utility incentive, if that does change during the post-installation portion of the application that you're filling out, you'll just want to list that information here. So 2,000, 3,000, whatever you want to list, whatever the utility changed the incentive to, just list that information here. And then moving forward, so I wanted to really highlight these 3 checkboxes. Has each new charger installed as part of the project been reported to the Alternative Fuels Data Center for inclusion in their alternative fueling station locator tool? You'll want to select yes. If you select no, you'll receive an error. And then we also have the following questions for the Oregon Clean Fuels Program. This section seems to take folks a bit longer than expected, so please, when you're filling out this application, expect these sections to take a little bit longer. You'll want to fill out all of this information by visiting these links. If you have any questions on the process of filling out the Oregon Clean Fuels Program information, or if you're experiencing any delays, please contact this email. And the folks at DEQ will get back to you as soon as possible to help you navigate this process. Some applicants have had to set up meetings to kind of get more of a walkthrough of the process if they're experiencing like unique situations or issues with the application or filling it out. So please note that this section does take more time, and I think that's not represented in a yes or no checkbox, but when you're going through the process, it can take some time. So when you're filling out your post-installation portion of the application, try to estimate the amount of time these fields will take before moving forward. It's not a process that's completed within a day. So then you'll want to do the file upload section. So you'll list your final electrical inspection number here, and you'll just want to list the number in this section. And then if you have a scan of the permits or the final electrical inspection, any documentation that you have from that process, just drop it in this area, and we'll look through it. Sometimes folks have submitted their initial building permit, and we've been able to trace just off of that building permit all the way to the end till the final inspection. So just fill in as much information as you can here, because if you don't have all of the necessary information, it does allow us to be able to track it all the way down the line. Okay, and moving forward, we have the required site photos. This is another area where applicants tend to run into some issues. So if you're missing any of these required site photos, your application will be sent back requesting additional information. If you decided not to charge a fee for pricing, then this photo is not applicable, so you don't need to submit that. However, if you're missing any of these, it will be flagged and sent back. So try to take as many of these photos of the project site as possible and submit them all at once, just to proceed without delaying your application. And then moving forward, we have the W-9 submission. So you'll want to submit the W-9 of the equipment owner. Again, we have the employee identification number that was submitted previously. So you'll want to make sure that that number matches what is listed on the current W-9. If what was listed when the funding, if the EIN that was listed when you reserved funding doesn't match the W-9 that was submitted, your application will be sent back. So just double check that these numbers are all matching, and make sure that the information listed in the W-9 for the street address matches what you list in this section of the application. Otherwise, it will create delays in your payment. So That's why we ask that folks double check this information and all the information they've uploaded with the W-9, because that will add extra time to your payment process when it's going through, because it'll be flagged for an error and it'll get sent back and we'll need a new W-9. So everybody's aware. Moving forward, we have Section 5, the rebate calculator worksheet. For this example, I just put 10,000 for equipment. Again, this is an illustration. None of these numbers are accurate, which is why 100 was selected for all of these. So you'll want to fill out the equipment cost, installation costs, and any other costs that were incurred that were eligible. I listed 0 for networking costs as well as 0 for maintenance contract costs, because this is a multifamily housing project in which neither of these are required. So if your project does require this, so say you have a publicly accessible parking location, you'll want to list the maintenance contract costs of up to 5 years here. And then you'll also, down below, want to include the maintenance contract or service level agreement and proof of payment for up to 5 years of the maintenance contract right here. So be sure to include that information. We separated it from the standard invoices so folks don't forget, but they need to include that here. And then you'll want to upload all of your invoices for the installation of the project. If some of your costs are broken out into different projects, or if your invoices aren't clearly itemized, just make sure to highlight the sections that you've listed in the application so that when we're reviewing it, we can tell where those costs are being incurred in your invoices. Yep, so if anybody has any questions, I went through this section a little bit quickly, so just wanted to highlight some of the issues that folks have faced previously so we can navigate those. Yeah, so make sure just to submit all of your invoices or proof of purchase for any of the costs that you list here. If they don't match, your application will be sent back because we'll have questions. Oh, and something else I'd like to highlight is permit costs are now an eligible expense, so you can list your permit costs here. Previously, they were ineligible, and you would have to list your permit costs here, but they're currently eligible for round 3, so you're welcome to list those in that section. And then following down below, we'll have your total project costs, your project site type location, the total number of ports that you plan to install, as well as additional incentives received down below, eligible expenses. These are all the calculations that are happening throughout your application as you're submitting this information. But the answer that most of you are likely looking for is the total rebate amount. And so you can see it's going between the base rebate calculation and the 75% of eligible costs. In this case, the 75% of eligible costs were significantly less than the base rebate. So your total rebate is $7,425. Again, if you want clarification on any of these calculations, you're welcome to go to the rebate calculator to do your own estimates of how much your rebate will likely be. And finally, we get to section 6, where you'll agree to the terms and services and move forward. And then if you want to list a comment, if you experienced any issues in the application, again, a big burden that people experience is that save button does disappear after the application has been submitted. We are working with Cognito on that, but it will take some time if they end up adding it. And then the signature here, you can draw it or type it. And finally, the date that you submitted. And then you'll want to just click that submit button and move forward with your application. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to pull up the site verification and recipient acknowledgement form, just so you all can see it. So this is the form that we require for every application that is submitted. You'll want to select between the 3 options: site owner, authorized agent, or third party. So you'll never select multiple, you'll only select one of the 3, depending on which applicant type you are. And depending on which category you select, you'll want to make sure that you fill out those sections. So for authorized agents, it's sections 1, 3, 5, and 4. But the site owner is going to fill out section 4. So make sure as the authorized agent that you're not filling out section 4 on behalf of the site owner. Same with if you're a third party, you have different sections to fill out. The applicant fills out sections 1 and 2, the equipment owner completes section 3, and the site owner fills out section 4. So you're going to have 3 different entities or 3 different folks filling out those sections. If you have questions on which of these categories that you fall under, again, please just contact Fourth and explain your situation and where you're confused, and they'll walk you through which of the entities that you fall under, or the applicant types that you fall under. And then you'll want to fill out all of this information. Here are the different sections. You can find this form online. I won't break it down too much, but you can find this form online and just start going through that process. If you have any questions, please reach out to Fourth. Make sure you don't forget to check any of these boxes. They are required, except for multifamily housing. It's for multifamily housing, of course. But if any of these boxes on the side are not checked, we will send your application back and it will need to be checked. And then you'll want to fill out the equipment owner signature with, again, either a wet signature, like an ink signature with a pen, or a like authorized signature, like domain, like DocuSign. And then you'll want to fill out the date too. Okay, I think we're ready for questions. Were any of the sections too fast, or if you had any questions on the application, we can go back over it. I see Alexandra and Brittany have been answering questions in the chat.
Yeah, I think there were a few questions, so I will relay those to you here in just a second. There was the
Thanks.
request that we go back to the project site information.
Okay, in the pre-installation application or the post?
Yeah, that was the pre-installation.
Okay. I believe it was this one. Nope. Oops. Okay. The project site information section. Do you know if there was a specific question around it or if they just wanted to see it? I would like to note too. Oh, they just wanted to see it?
Yeah, they just wanted to see it again.
Okay, perfect. I'll scroll through it really slowly. I would like to note that we will be posting PDFs of these applications, so one for the pre-installation and one for the post-installation. If you all have any questions about that, that will be listed following the December 17th launch, when the application link will be live and when people can actually start entering their application, so you can at least see the application in full form before you submit. Continue scrolling. And I will note too that the round 3 application is fairly consistent with the round 2 application. So if you are comfortable with that process, they're going to be fairly similar. Most of the main changes were highlighted in this walkthrough.
Okay, and then there was a couple other questions that I wanted to relay to you as well that I think still need answering in the chat. Um, so first of all, so what does an applicant do if the charger that they're installing is approved by ODOT, but not the utility rebate that they would be eligible for?
Yep. So when you're reserving funding or you're filling out the post-installation portion of the application, just list that reason for why you're not applying for the utility. Let me see if I can show you what you would do. Let's see. So what you would do is, does your utility offer a utility incentive? You'd select yes. And will you apply for that incentive? You would select no. And then list that your charger is not listed as a qualified charger for hypothetically Pacific Power or PGE. My charger is not listed there, but it is listed on ODOT's QPL. And so that would allow you to move forward without applying for a utility incentive.
Okay, just checking if there are any other questions here.
And Mike, I see Mike Runer asked a question about the EPRI list and how often it's updated. Usually monthly or bi-monthly, depending on how quickly they can do the updating process.
And then there was the question, so to draw a signature, do you use a mouse on a PC?
Uh, yes. So if you're referring to the signature in the application, yeah, I can kind of show you. It's not pretty, but you just use your mouse. Like I'm using a laptop mouse, and yeah, you can fill in your signature or you can type it.
Okay, and it looks like there was the question, our supplier quoted a 1-year network agreement with their equipment. Do we need to request more than 1 year?
So when you're filling out the post installation application, depending on what your project site type is, so if it's, for instance, publicly accessible, you will need to have more than 1 year. Or let me double check that. You might be able to do just 1 year of the networking costs and then pay for it later. I'll double check our guidelines on that and make sure. Because you can fill out up to 3 years in the project site, but I believe networking is required, but it would be dependent on your project site type. So we'll get more information from you and answer back. But Larry, to confirm, if it's in the quote and you're trying to make a reservation at that time for a pre-installation application, you can move forward without the networking costs listed. But it's something that will be requested in the post-installation portion of the application.
Okay, and there was the question, are there requirements for the site such as lighting and ADA compliance? And is this part of the site verification?
So it's not in the site verification form, but it is in the post installation portion of the application. If there is site lighting and other things already at the site, and say you're just adding the chargers, then you can list the cost as zero. However, if you want to include site lighting or need to include site lighting, then you'd want to list those eligible expenses in your application, as it will impact your rebate to increase it. So having those costs up front is helpful.
Okay, just waiting to see if any other questions come in. We've got about 9 more minutes left in the webinar, so feel free to enter any last minute questions in the chat.
And this walkthrough will be recorded and listed on our community charging rebates website. So if you need to go back through and review it at another time or when you're filling out your application, feel free to do so.
Okay, and then Justin asked, you might have already touched on this, but is the level two rebate for 11.5 kilowatt covered by the 75%, or is it only up to 6,250? Justin, so it'll be the either the per port rebate or the 75%, whichever is less between those two. So we'd need to calculate, obviously, project cost before determining that. If you want, you can use, and I'll put it in the chat, the rebate calculator, because that'll kind of help you figure out what your potential rebate will be.
Yeah, and I can kind of show you how it works in the rebate calculation sheet. So you can see it'll calculate the base rebate amount, which is that per port amount that's listed on the table. Depending on how many ports you include in your application, it'll increase that base rebate amount. Or once you fill out the eligible project costs, so that's something that's only filled out in the post installation portion of the application, then we'll be able to see how much was actually spent on the project, and it'll be the lesser of the two. So for this example, the base rebate amount was $22,000 based on the amount of ports that they had and that the project was multifamily housing. But with the inclusion of the eligible project costs after installation, it brought their rebate down to $7,425. So you can see if I were to increase this equipment amount, we'll do $15,000 and I'll increase another one. We'll do installation was 10,000. Okay. So that would increase their 75% of eligible project costs to 18,600. So that's why when folks are inputting their post installation application information, it's best to list all of the costs that they've been paid for upfront. So if you're paying for 1 year of the networking, it's more ideal to pay for all 3 years upfront because then you can list it in your cost expense. So in the breakdown, so say we'll do it right now. Say this is $5,000 for installation, and instead of doing zero for networking because they're a multifamily housing, say they're planning to have networking in the next 3 years and have already paid it up front and they wanted to go the extra mile of adding networking. And these are all hypothetical numbers. I'll put in 5,000 so it changes the amount. It ended up calculating the same. We'll do 7,000. This would increase their eligible project costs, and so their rebate would end up being higher. Does that make sense? So yeah, and if you're confused about these calculations, as Brittany stated, the rebate calculator is really helpful. So you can see, well, if we paid for site lighting up front instead of delaying that and paid for it now, it would increase our rebate. So
Okay, and then there was also the question, will people be able to pay for the 30 or apply for the 30% federal income tax credit up to 100,000 and this
yes.
program? Okay.
Yes, applicants are eligible to apply for any federal incentives. Let me go back and look in the application at how we list it. Yeah, so you'll want to include any utility incentives, other state or federal grants. Tax credits are not included in this calculation, and that's because nobody is guaranteed that they're going to receive those tax credits at the time of the application. Perfect, and we have 3 minutes left. Feel free to type any residual questions in the chat, but if you end up leaving this webinar and having additional questions, you're more than welcome to email us and ask us. And I'll also note that on the 16th, we do plan to send out an email to all attendees of these webinars, as well as any past applicants in any of the rounds, to provide them with more information on the launch. There will be a bulleted list of all the documents that are accessible currently that applicants can utilize and look through, as well as webinars. So there will be like email listing all of this information, anything that you could possibly need the day before the launch. Yeah, Kent. So we will try to get a PDF of the application. So just the standard, you won't be able to click through any of the drop downs or select yes or no to anything. It'll just be a basic PDF of the application so you can look through it, likely by the close of business tomorrow. And then we will have the application link published on the 17th. So no applicants are allowed to apply earlier or mess with the application beforehand or get into the application. It won't be until the 17th. So there is no, how do I explain this? It's really hard for us to gauge how quickly an application or our funding will be fully reserved or how many applications we'll get in at a time. I will say that with round 3, it is the most funding that we have released, so 2.75 million for this round. Our round 2 was 2.5 million, and the round before that was 1.75 million, so we are releasing the most amount of funding. That's something to note, and then applicants are reserved or reservations go through as they come in. So they're reviewed, and then if they're compliant, we reserve them. But if they're missing information, then they get sent back. So that's why we advise getting all of this information to folks up front and in advance, and accurate as quickly as possible. So try to make sure your application is accurate before submitting. You won't hold a spot in the queue. If something's incorrect and it gets sent back, you'll go to the end of the queue. So you'll want to just fill out accurate information, but there's no way for us to confirm how quickly funding will go. It's really up to the applicants and how many people decide to apply and how many applicants are eligible. So last year, it's hard to say. So we took the full timeline, so from early March all the way to early July to fill up to use up all of the funding to reserve it all. But sometimes the non-priority bucket goes really quickly, and sometimes the priority bucket goes really quickly. So even though we have funding for that duration of time, either of the buckets can be completely reserved. Okay, it looks like we are out of time. Yes, the application will not be available until the 17th. So there's no application link on the website at this time. Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate all of the questions. It's really helpful to see what you guys are interested in and interested in seeing, and we're more than willing to answer any questions that come up after this video. Again, this webinar is recorded and we will be posting it online. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing the applications that come in on December 17th.